In 1971, the artist Michail Grobman immigrated from Moscow to Israel. 2 months after his landing in Israel, he exhibited his work prior to immigration in one-man show in Tel Aviv Museum of Art. Crowds came to see his exhibition. At the moment of the vernissage, he made good and long-lasting connections with all gamut of Israeli artists, from old school like Yosef Zaritsky, Avigdor Stimatsky, to young conceptualist artists. All of them liked his art, his wit, his special charisma, but few of them, if any, could share his program. He came with the idea to make Jewish art in Israel. You can probably ask, what can be more natural than practice Jewish art in the Jewish state? However, it's not that simple equation. Let's consider what writes Sarah Hinsky, the keenest analyst of art in Israel. She wrote that in what concerns culture, the Zionist state positioned itself as the outpost of the West in the Middle East. In accordance with this mission, Israeli art was following the general development of Western art from abstract to the conceptual art. In practice, this meant imitation of either French or American art. However, to be closed in Jewish nationhood was out of the discussion in Israeli art field. Grobman was not foolish. He learned the situation. He understood that there is no niche for Jewish art in Israel. In 1976, he realized that he needs to reconfigure his idea of Jewish art as modern and avant-garde pursuit. He stepped out with a manifesto, a writing, in the name of the group that he called Leviathan. And in this manifesto, he displayed his new ideas. The text was really fresh and interesting, but barely comprehensible in the Israeli art field. He claimed, first, that there is a place for Jewish art in Israeli state, but that it must be avant-garde art. Second, for the sake of this goal, he proposed to get rid of all the classical heritage of European art. Third, and as if in contrast with his proclaimed goal, he proposed the pathetic daubing, as he said, of Polish-Ukrainian shtetl must be also got rid of. And finally, he frightened the good Jews with the saying that the depiction of prophet's beard is the worst of pornography. The manifesto was intended to irritate, and indeed it outraged even friendly critics. I will not quote their comments except one. And I quote, Ran Shchori, we Israeli artists have no gospel to bring to the world. We are incapable of innovating anything. We can only give our nuance. Israeli art is a part of what's taking place in the universal scene and must be so. End of quote. Let us now turn to the idea of Jewish art. In fact, it was an almost impossible thing to do in the modern world. Because, not because of Jewish, but because of art, because art changes its definition perpetually in modern period. Let's take the main constituents of a work of art: contents, style, and concepts. What of this can be a holder of Jewish identity? First, art can't be Jewish in modern period as for its contents, such as representation of Jewish life, because realistic representation is no longer thought as modern art. Second, art can't be Jewish in terms of style, because Jewish style is a concept that smells Nazist inspection of style as for its racial characteristics. So what remains is concepts. There is one grand concept concerning art in Jewish tradition. I mean the second commandment. All adepts of traditional idiom of Jewish art denied its validity. However, in the modern time, its significance changed. Of course, one can't deny art, renounce art, and at the same time to remain artist. One can deny one current idiom of art and propose another one to practice art in another definition. And this is a modernist way indeed. In this way, an American Jewish artist, Barnett Newman, has renounced representation in art at all, even residual representation that remains in abstract art, and came to the fully aniconic formula of art. He said that as a result, the beholder can feel a release and a feeling of contact with the absolute. How he came to the idea to represent nothing, even less than abstract art affords. He said that his idea was to think about the very first moments of the creation of the world, when nothing still existed and when nothing was to represent. As he said, on artists, like on the creator, to wrest truth from the void. And this is a sort of Kabbalistic reflection. In this very time, Gershom Scholem rediscovered the Kabbalah and gave it a new significance, not as magic, something magical, but as intellectual pursuit, close to philosophy, and touching the same problems that philosophy touched, among them precisely the problem of the void, of creating something from world from nothing. Grobman's first attempts at new Jewish art also comprised the gesture of renunciation. He used words and ideas instead of canvases and colors, and these very sparingly. In his work Stone, he covered the stone with a script quoting the dictionary entry about stones. In his work The Endless Voyage, he used one thin line ascending from lower left corner to the upper right corner. Line is something endless, according to definition, and this endless line was inscripted with his own name. These works, most of all, are similar to the conceptual art that was popular at the same time in Israel. Conceptual art, too, recurred to radical reduction of material, and they called it dematerialization of art object. However, you see that Grobman substitutes his formula of renunciation of art for dematerialization of art object. In his notes, heretical notes that he wrote, I can quote, he wrote, "Picture, font, white surface. This is the path of renunciation." End of quote. For the time, script became his main medium, and Bible in its Kabbalistic interpretation, the main frame of reference. According to Kabbalah, script, written word, was one of the main tools of creation. Of course, this word was not written on paper. It was written by black fire on white fire. In the work, The Jerusalem Construction, we see how the white substance spreads over the text and how the white beam falls from it in the dark void. The beam itself is inscription. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. The subject of the next work is word, the very medium of the new Jewish art. Its main constituents are the same, the black, the white, the text, and in the upper part of the work we see the Leviathan, the mythical fish that became the personal symbol of Grobman. Leviathan is a creature that was created in the first days of creation, but at the same time it is a messianic symbol. It is a symbol of, for Grobman at least, it is a symbol of end of the days and the truth to come. The black void is one of the main constituents of Grobman's art. In fact, Kabbalah itself has much to say about the void. According to its mature formula, God created the world not of himself by emanation, but of the chaos and the void that he freed for this purpose. And this means that a seed of chaos and the void remains in the creation as evil and death. That's why Grobman thought about it very much and made the void and the chaos the medium of which he created his mature reflection on the Holocaust. At the same time, void is a powerful means to reconfigure the idea of art. When Grobman received the commission to make a sculpture, he proposed a void, a pit, instead of sculptural object, and made of it a commemorative installation devoted to the Holocaust. Later, in the 1980s, a number of such monuments configured as a pit appeared in Europe, including that of Michail Ullmann in Berlin. But I think that Grobman's was the first one. The line of reflection on the void and on the evil as a medium to speak of the Holocaust brought Grobman to the idea to use the landscape of Judean desert as the medium. In Russian, desert is called pustynya. The very word originates in the word void. At this point, Grobman came to the Judean desert with his group that assisted him in creating a series of performances, actions in the desert under the cover title, The Angel of Death. The thought about the Holocaust was behind this project. However, it is not precisely commemorative or narrative. There is no narration of the Holocaust. The meaning revolves around Jewish meaning of the void, chaos, death, and God. To include this wild scenery in his work, Grobman accentuated it with some motives to choice: dots, characters, text, and figures. This period of his work finished with a new renunciation. In 1980, he conceived a new series of the actions in the desert. And for the sake of this project, he wrote a poem. He wrote this poem on a sheet, and the sheet was released into the Dead Sea. The poem reads, and I quote, "I, service number 275913, this day renounce glory. I renounce the seasons, birds and plants. I renounce streets, wind, word. I renounce God. The angel of death will cover me with its heavy wing. And tears of parting, tears of love will be my only consolation in this eternal joyless sleep." The line, "I renounce God," appeared largest close to the viewer. The renouncement of God, a strange idea indeed. It brought a new transformation in Grobman's art, the topic that I will keep for the next speech.